Hey guys, Thomas the Genie here, aka Mustached. I'm here to review the video game Warriors Orochi 4 Ultimate. If you end up enjoying this full review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my Discord, second to my Patreon, third to my PayPal. Any donations are greatly appreciated and also can allow me to play even further games and help support the channel in general. Shilling will be recalled at the end of the review. With that out of the way, let's get into Warriors Orochi 4 Ultimate. So, as per video game, reviews, I will split it up between story and gameplay. So, first, let's talk about the story. So, for a little backstory before that, though, this is, of course, the fourth installment of Warriors Orochi 4, which is a crossover between the Dynasty Warriors characters and Samurai Warriors characters, respectively. And, of course, they have had three previous installments, each telling their own story, and each improving in either story and or gameplay, depending on which one you're referring to. 3 comparatively has, I would argue, a better story, but I would also argue that the gameplay here is objectively better. That doesn't mean subjectively, you can feel that the third one was better, but we'll get more into that a little bit later. Anyway, getting back to the story of Warriors Orochi 4. So this time around, our warriors are once again recalled into one world, but this time a mysterious force seems to be behind it, only for that mysterious force to be revealed as Zeus. It would appear that this time around the gods have intervened, and Zeus and his several other gods are testing these warriors, as well as dropping some of their MacGuffins, aka these snake bracelets, that allow the warriors to upgrade and godify up in power to potentially help them fight back, along with getting all the warriors back, having some interactions here and there, and so on and so forth. So with that as the premise, let's dig a little deeper. The story is, I believe it was about 8 chapters worth of content, and ultimately the issue that arrives from this is that the story is indeed long. And not only is it long, but it's paced fairly poorly. A significant amount of time is fighting over these bracelets, when not collecting more warriors in unique circumstances. And it definitely breaks away from Warriors Orochi 3 Ultimate, which actually created these unique areas, unique situations, and so on and so forth. That was definitely more inspirational, but there are some new maps here, but we'll get more into that into gameplay as well. So, a significant portion of this is dedicated again to these bracelets, which does leave a little bit to be, a lot more to be desired in terms of interactions, and more so the god aspect of the gods interfering in the first place. Not to mention that, of course, within the context of this very same story, Orochi does indeed have to make some sort of comeback because, well, it's titled as such. So, of course, Orochi needs to play some part of it, and so he does eventually come in, and thus the warriors and gods now have to deal with other gods that are opposing, as well as Orochi, who is also opposing. And again, the layout of that could lend itself to a lot of opportunities, which some are represented in many dialogue cutscenes that are just 2 frames of people talking instead of cutscenes, which Warriors Orochi 3 did have that, the same tree as well, but also had some unique cutscenes, which this game also does have some cutscenes as well, but Nonetheless, the length of this game is definitely something worth to consider, in terms of you'll probably start getting tired of collecting these bracelets or hearing about which bracelet you need to collect, or fighting it back or whatever. So eventually it does wrap up. You eventually make your way through the gods, the evil ones in particular, facing Orochi, and you come to an end. And Ultimate, since I'm reviewing the full game, seems to add a bizarre soft restart to the story for whatever reason. It's completely unnecessary and only serves to, again, it could have cut several of those missions to just introduce the new, or I should say returning characters from Warriors Orochi 3. So again, a lot of over-bloated content is here present, and it does kind of get stale and repetitive in not a good way, in terms of the story. So if I were to give the story a score, I'd probably give it a 3 or 4 out of 10. I definitely feel a significantly waste of time is spent sort of just dozing around trying to figure out what's going on. Now, one way you could have fixed this, potentially, is either have all of the bracelets, if you're going to maintain that that is the thing that you want to have in your game, either have them all implemented at the start of your game, or preferably have them all at the end of your game, and the warriors are able to power up at a significant part of the plot that would demand that they would need godly powers. I think that's the route that they should have went down personally, and it probably would have helped ease the story along significantly easier, if anything, instead of meandering about collecting all of these bracelets at different times. And you probably could have spent a lot more time with reintroducing crossover events, as well as between the different warriors and the gods themselves, as I do feel like the gods are heavily underused. In fact, I find this a particularly odd one, as both gameplay and story, is Kratos is an NPC in this game, where he could have been a unique character. They could have just made their own interpretation of Kratos. I'm not sure why they didn't. Again, a huge wasted opportunity there, and it's a shame, because I think that would have garnered a little bit of a head tilt of like, oh, people who like and enjoy Kratos from that game would have probably maybe even come over and been like, oh, let me check this out for this one character. Again, just a way to ease people into this that might not have been fans previously. That's also a suggestion, but here we are. So that is the story. Ultimately, again, it's a bit overbloated, and just the amount of content here does seem to just get a bit too repetitive for its own good. Now let's talk about gameplay. So, interestingly, the gameplay is significantly better, and in fact, comparatively to Warriors Orochi 3 directly, objectively, and yes, I am using that term here, objectively, Warriors Orochi 4 does have more unique characters than Warriors Orochi 3. There are more characters in Warriors Orochi 3 that have very similar style weapons, whether that be swords, counting of how many there were back in the day when, they were taking from, I believe, Dynasty Warriors 5 and Samurai Warriors 2 or 3, whichever one it was. I can't remember off the top of my head, point being that the Dynasty Warriors characters were a little bit less unique back in the day, and I don't hold that against Dynasty Warriors, at least when it started. I don't fault 2 and 3 and possibly even 4 and 5 for doing that, and starting to lessen that as each game progressed, as well as introduce new characters. It's a lot to handle, considering the overwhelming count of how many warriors are in each game, respectively. Dynasty Warriors obviously taking a higher count than Samurai Warriors, and Samurai Warriors 4 having the highest count of any Warriors game that I can conceivably think of currently, is also quite an impressive number considering within its crossover here. So that is a lot to manage, considering. And Warriors Orochi 4 does take the best from both games series, respectfully. Warriors Orochi 4 takes from Dynasty Warriors 8, which had the most unique weapons in Dynasty Warriors history, and I had my issues with Dynasty Warriors. I actually was not a fan that you could hold any weapon. I was a fan of the EX attacks that made, that character unique when they used that weapon, but I was not a fan of them being able to switch to any weapon. I don't mind if the weapon switching was just for you can, swap the same weapon for the same weapon of a different type. I wouldn't have minded that, but when you give every character every weapon, it does make them even less significant. It makes them stand out significantly less, which is my biggest issues with both Dynasty Warriors 7 and 8. And Dynasty Warriors 6 has even more issues, and so does 9. On top of cloning being an issue consistently throughout the entire series, it is barely present here in Warriors Orochi 4 Ultimate, which is something I do have to commend. Again, since the weapon swapping is removed, every character in this game conceivably has a unique and different gameplay style, weapon, and, combo loop, if you will. Even the characters that are the most similar technically do have different charges and specials, also called musos. There are 6 total characters I can think of that come to mind that are the closest in terms of being clones in this game, that being Loki and the other god, Perseus. Those two have the same weapon, but have a different charge throughout their combo system, as well as Nene and Kunoichi, both from Warriors, or Samurai Warriors, and they had the same basic attack earlier on, but have different, again, charges and specials. And the last 2 that are similar are Kataro Fuma and the skinnier demon guy whose name I can't remember off the top of my head. Those 6 are the only cases of it's very close to cloning without being one-to-one cloning, which can be found in Dynasty Warriors 6 and 9. So even then, every character in this game is unique, which again, I far appreciate more that is the case here than over Warriors Orochi 3. I enjoy a lot of the new weapons, or the weapons that were, I should say, carried over from Dynasty Warriors 8. One Guy's Boat is a lot of fun, just to point out one weapon out of the many. Most of Jin's characters are a lot of fun to play in their unique way. So yes, I actually do appreciate the craziness that these weapons are allowed to be, and I know that someone may very well counter with, well, what about staying true to the, I guess, more historical weapons comparatively? And to that argument, I say just look at the intro. What? Why would you push yourself to staying realistic when the whole mentality of this is the 1 versus 1,000 and has been for, well, since Dynasty Warriors 2? And each opening has gotten crazier and crazier, just looking at those sequences where they destroy, thousands or hundreds of troops with one fatal swing, powered up by mystical energy or whatever. And you want to have that be contained within realistic looking weapons, and I ask, well, why? Why not vary the options off into different abilities, combos, and preferences for players that might not be that might be new to the Warriors games? Since every character here is unique, a new player can come into this game in particular, choose the number of any officers, and feel like each one plays significantly different, or different enough from any other warrior to be like, oh, that's different, or, and maybe they might not even enjoy a particular character. That's totally fine, but the amount of options that they have here in this game is daunting and impressive comparatively to 3 and every other installment of Dynasty Warriors and Samurai Warriors. So, in that regard, the gameplay is really, really good. However, I will note that this game does have significantly less maps, and that does strike me as a bit odd, as Warriors Orochi 3 definitely took advantage of combining maps from Dynasty Warriors and Samurai Warriors and creating these different aspects of what the worlds would look like combined. Here, it seems like the areas are completely separated, and not only that, the amount of god levels are significantly low. I think there's only 3 or even possibly 2, if I can recall correctly. I want to say 3 at most, but that's still significantly low. Again, in terms of wanting to do missions and, figuring out where you want to go or need to go, varying up your options is always going to be a good idea. Instead, once you see the same map over and over again, there's only so many new things you can attempt to do within that confined area, and it's going to come across as way less significant if, again, you come across the same map over and over again. So that is where Warriors Orochi 4 does significantly fall short on. In terms of other unique mechanics, each character has their own unique god power thing that they can do, which again adds on top of the folds that they already have, their own unique combos, but now they have even more unique abilities on top of those already established combos. On top of the fact that, yes, only a select few of those have the ability to transform into these more godlike figures that have even more abilities. And while I didn't personally use those particular modes that often, I do appreciate these little add-ons for, those who might be inclined to do so. Again, more options is always going to be better in the long run in terms of replayability. Now, in terms of replayability, I will also argue that the ultimate weapons, which are these X weapons that you can unlock, are a bit strenuous to unlock. You need a significant amount of items and gems and whatever the gems are referred to in the games, the larger ones, do significantly take off the bulk of just having to play all these characters, and in ways I do prefer the more sort of mysterious and unique system that it used to have, where you would go to a character in a unique stage and you would only have to do it the once, instead of building and building and grinding and grinding and grinding. Eventually that does get pretty old, but I guess playing each new character does at least alleviate some of that. But ultimately, I would say, in terms of gameplay, it's significantly better than Warriors Orochi 3. Again, I'm talking about objectively. Subjectively, I get that some people do enjoy 3 more than 4, and I can totally understand why. And I think some of that does have to do with the story of 3, and even some of the DLC, which I've never been a fan of the DLCs, even though I did purchase them technically and did show them off here in my gameplay of it. But, yes, it does come across as a little bit underwhelming in that regard, in terms of what they allow to totally have. In terms of DLC, I'm actually kind of shocked, as even 3 comparatively had way more DLC. Well, not actually by much, but some of its DLC is still a bit grotesque in 3. The costumes, in particular, always kind of piss me off that they are DLC and not something that you can unlock, which was a feature in Dynasty Warriors 5, by the way. I'm always going to favor costumes being unlockable in-game versus DLC, of course. Now, a little bit more understandably, I guess I can see why they would have to have DLC for guest characters this time around, even though they were a part of 3. That one's a bit trickier, as you are talking about different. It's still confined within Koei Tecmo, but there's a bit more finagling going on there, I guess. I can't ultimately say what that's worth. And yeah, the allotted new stages in DLC, I am significantly unimpressed by all of them. With the exception, I guess, of the Dynasty Warriors versus Samurai Warriors all-out brawl, which I thought was actually going to be way more bombastic, and would have been more preferable if it had its own new stage, as well as all the other DLCs for that matter. Again, just giving the players more to do within that context of what you are allowing your ultimate experience to be. And yeah, again, I just find it odd that they skipped out on previous costume DLC this time around. That just does seem a little bit odd. Again, I guess they didn't want to. They wanted to preserve their money elsewhere. Anyway, as a general score, I would say outside of DLC, just the gameplay in general, I would give a solid 7 out of 10. Again, with each character being stand-outish and being unique and having all the magical abilities and all of that good stuff, the gameplay feels solid, never feels like it stagnates or crashes or gets a little bit, freezy, as other previous installments have in the past for me. I do feel like, in terms of that, this is the most solid of those. And thank goodness they didn't wait for Dynasty Warriors 9 and Samurai Warriors 5, or Dynasty Warriors 9 and Samurai Warriors 5, to cross those two over, because woof, that would have been a disaster of a video game. So thank goodness they decided to have this during the 8 and 4 renaissance of both Dynasty Warriors and Samurai Warriors, giving us objectively, in terms of gameplay, the best Warriors Orochi game thus far. And I do have another video talking about something that, as a long-time Warriors fan, that I think others have talked about wanting as well, but I'm here to make an official video, and we'll do that as soon as this one wraps up. But I'm done talking about it. Again, gameplay, a 7 out of 10. Story was, I believe I gave it a 4. And that is my full review of Warriors Orochi 4 Ultimate, and with that, I will officially end this review. Thanks for watching. If you ended up enjoying, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to Discord, second to my Patreon, third to my PayPal. Any donations are desperately needed and can allow me to play more games, as well help support this channel and its continual to not die. With that out of the way, I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.